Okay, so this is what we're going to be looking at today. We're going to be making a title card for an imaginary TV show or drama using a handful of stock photos from Unsplash and some stock footage like ink drops and dust and that kind of thing. The process is fairly simple, you know. We're just using ink bleeds to animate in the main people there and paintbrush style stock footage to animate in the text. It's nothing too difficult, but it is a process and a technique that you can apply to pretty much anything to animate it in or out inside of After Effects. I'm going to start in Photoshop, so let's get stuck in. Okay, so we're going to start in Photoshop to cut these characters out of their respective photos. Now there's nothing to stop you doing this with the pen tool and layer masks inside of After Effects, but for this kind of thing I always find it easier for Photoshop to do the heavy lifting in the first place. And it also means that once it's masked, it's done. You don't have to worry about it. If you do see any discrepancies or changes you want to make, you can always go back and update it inside Photoshop. So when we open up our images in Photoshop, they come in as locked and as a background. So I'm going to need to change that. So what I tend to do is just make a copy of that layer by hitting Command and J or Control and J for on Windows like myself, and we just turn off the background. For this case, we're just going to need the subject, but I'll show you another quick tip to that. So I'll duplicate this again. First I'm just going to call background, and this one I'm going to call geisha, and turn off the background. Now with the geisha layer selected, I have this option. If we go down and select the background, now with the geisha layer selected, Photoshop gives me the option to select the subject, so I'll do that. And you can see it's working away. Alright, so I can hit Control or Command and plus to zoom in. We can see that it's selected. Now it's not entirely selected, there's bits that aren't. So this is using a variation of the magic wand tool. I'm not going to worry about the stray hair, it's beyond the scope of this particular project, so I don't need it. But if we mouse over any of the tools here, we get like a little quick tip on what they are. So in this case, it's the quick selection tool or magic wand. So if we go into it, there's a little drop down corner arrow there. So it's object selection tool. There's a few different variations, but they sort of are flavors of the magic wand. I'm using this one here in the middle. Now you can see it turns to a circle shape with a plus in the middle. So I can hold down shift and I can add to my selection just by clicking into it. And if I decide that's too much, I can hold down Alt or Option and click, and it will start to remove from the selection. Alright, so I'm just going to add to this, and we're going to keep going. Okay, let's go. Now none of this is how is cast in stone. I can always come back to it, and we're just going to create a layer mask. I'm holding down the space bar to move around on the work area. Okay, so bit there I'll get rid of. I'll probably do that with the brush tool. That seems fine for the most part. It doesn't look too difficult. So yeah, with the geisha layer selected, I go down to this little mask icon, and it's just basically a black dot inside of a white rectangle. Now I just click on it. There we go, it creates a layer mask. Now as I said, it's not entirely perfect, so we've got this little bit here. You know, actually I'm going to undo that because it's not quite done there either. But with the brush, I'm going to hit B to bring up the brush tool, which is over here, and we're going to edit the mask a little bit more. So when we select the brush tool in the mask editing mode, the foreground and background colors switch to the default of black and white. So with white selected at the foreground, that will add to our mask. With black selected, alright, you can either click this button or hit X on the keyboard. With black in the foreground, you can just paint away. Okay, nothing too crazy. Let's go back to the way it was. So I'm going to add to the mask because there's a few bits here that need some attention. And if you click and then hold down shift and click again, it'll give you a straight line. So it doesn't always work. There we go, lovely. Go again, and if we hold keep tapping the square bracket or curly bracket key, whatever you want to call it, it's just there beside the return button or return key. It will make the brush head smaller or larger as appropriate. So when you want to get right in, You make it nice and small, just to get rid of that bit of orange. There's a couple of effects that I'll add in After Effects to remove that orange from the background. You can see here it's actually a bit crispy on the edge. So again, like, it depends on how much detail you really need, you know. It's a technique rather than a masterclass in cutting things out. So we'll just add to it a little here, and see how it's a little crispy on the edge. Now if I want to get a better view, I can go into my channels palette over here. I can turn on the geisha mask, and I can also turn on the background for reference. Now the red isn't going to show up when you export it, it's just more of it's indicating where the mask is. This can be considered sort of overkill, but you know, you want it to look good, you want it to look clean and crisp. And the correct areas are cut out, and the correct areas are in place. Let's just gently, sort of almost like colouring in really. Lovely. This bit of orange and the sort of dangly necklace thing at the bottom of her parasol shade, something. Fan doesn't have to be 100% perfect. Just for me, and the edges around the shoulder, the hands and the head, which are areas that you'd focus on anyway in real life. You know, they're the areas that for me I want to get looking well. See here, I missed this part. Now you can always add to it both with the wand tool before you create the mask, but that's why we use the layer mask rather than, you know, new layer via copy or new layer via cut, because it just means that there's that bit more flexibility in terms of editing and getting it right. Okay, it's the geisha, great stuff. So turn up the channel mask there, layers. Okay, so what can be handy as well is to, depending on what you're going to be doing, you may need a clean backplate based on your image here. So if I go over and select the mask by hitting Control or Command on the mask icon, it's created a selection for me based on my layer mask. All right, and you can do that for any kind of shape. You can do it with text if you just Control and click on Windows, Command and click on OS X, and it will give you this selection. So if I then select my background, new background fill, I'm going to rename that one background fill. I go up to select, modify, expand, about 50 pixels I think seem to work. And what I will then do is apply the, I'm not going to go into generative fill because you get some crazy results, just content aware fill is what I need for this particular one, and that's a preview of what I can get. We're not going to need much, if any, detail in the background. We might not even end up needing it, so I'll just hit apply and OK, and you can see now what we have. And it'll make more sense once I turn on the geisha, and it means that, say if I wanted to move her around in After Effects, the background is continuous. I probably won't need this, but it's good to have. Right, so I'll save this and I'll move on to the next one. Okay, so in After Effects, here we go. I'll set up a new composition. So it's Control or Command and N, and we've got a whole bunch of different presets here. Got all the usual ones. These, to be honest, these are the three you're going to be using the most. There's a few variations for 4K and social media, HDV, DVC Pro, Cineon, film, but realistically HD is the one you're going to be using the most. So try to stick to 25 or 30 frames per second, 1920 by 1080. So we'll do that, and we'll just call it comp 1. Set your duration to about 10 seconds. Keep the background color as black. Alright, so we just hit OK, and there we go. Now, if we look down at the bottom of the screen, we have a few little buttons. We can check this toggle transparency grid, which gives us the same sort of transparent background as we get in Photoshop. And we can also click this title or action safe grid, or proportional grid. Just these are more for layout purposes. For now, we're going to turn them off because we don't need them. Alright, so what are we looking at? We have we need to drag in our PSDs. So we double click over here in the project window and Command or Control and I grab my 3 PSDs. Most importantly, down here gives me the option to choose between footage, composition, retain layer sizes, or composition. So we click on retain layer sizes. And what that does is it will import our PSDs and they'll have the same layers and backgrounds and all that kind of thing. So see, there's our background fill for our geisha. There she is cut out, that kind of thing. And it's the same for our woman with a hat and our hooded friend, who I forgot to name, so call him Hood. Cool. We'll grab this, our hood, and we'll go back into comp 1. Drag him over there. Same for the one with the hat. Copy and paste. And for our geisha. You can see there's a bit of a size difference there, so that'll be alright. I've already imported a few other assets here, so I'm going to start with this one, the old paper, drop that in as my background, and I'll lock it for now. Okay, so just going to start arranging our main characters. So I'll hit S on the keyboard to bring up the scale parameters. I can always drag this window over. I've got quite a wide monitor, it's 21:9, so it gives me a bit more space to play with. I'll just drag these out. It'd be really cool if it would sort of, if each one would follow on from the other rather than just squashing them. Whoops, if that happens, hit tilde key, which is between Shift and Z on Windows. Cool. Or it's sorry, it's between Shift and Z on Apple and up beside the 1 on Windows. Okay, so drag these around a bit. So geisha, I am happy with. I hit V on the keyboard to bring up the move tool, which is up here. I can drag them around. There's a cool little thing here, toggle mask and shape path visibility. So I'll just click on that and it'll show where my layer bounding boxes are. So that's cool for her. Just lock it for now. Woman with a hat, I'm going to scale her down a bit. Ideally their heads should all more or less be the same size. You know, keep the scale somewhat similar. So I think 65 looked like a bit more of a sweet spot, and the same for hood. I'll just guess at 65, and yeah, might need to scale up the geisha a little. Cool. So I'll move the geisha over a bit. So I want her to come in later. Now, first of all, I want these guys to animate in. If you don't see these columns here, you can get at them by left or right clicking, go to columns, and what you want are switches, modes, parent and link. They're the 3 most important ones for me. Obviously layer name, number, these ones are almost always on by default, but you need switches, modes, parent and link, and the rest are, you know, you might want them. I don't. So what we're going to do is animating girl with hat, and we'll click on this here. These ones are all your transfer modes, so multiply, lighten, screen, overlay are the ones I tend to use the most. They're the same as in Photoshop and Illustrator. These transfer modes show up in a whole load of different applications as well. You'll find them in Materials and Blender, Cinema 4D and everything. So we're going to make the luminance of our ink clip drive the opacity of our characters here. It's a lot more complicated than it sounds really easy. So I'll just set the woman with the hat's transfer mode to ink transition number 5. Okay, it gives me this little mask icon straight away, same as the one in Photoshop, but that means that woman with hat is looking at the alpha channel or transparency of ink transition, and there isn't any. But what it does need to look at is the difference between the black and white. So I'll click on that, and it turns out it seems to vanish. Now what it's looking at is, if I bring the ink up a bit, you can have a look. So right now, woman with hat is looking at the white of this layer and deciding, yeah, okay, that's cool, 100% opacity for me. But then when the black starts coming in, the black sort of wipes it away. Now I want the reverse of that, so I can just click on this tiny little box here, which says click to invert matte, and the reverse is true. So now when it's white, she's invisible. When it's black, she's visible. And the cool part is, you get all these lovely bits in between. So just turn off woman with hat. The grey area and the fringing as the ink bleeds out, and you can get some really nice, really elegant looking transitions and effects with that. So I don't need to see the ink transition for now. I'm going to move it off to the side a bit, because I'll show you what it looks like if it's in the middle, where the black just seems to hit straight away, you know, it comes in really hard and fast. So that's why I would like it further over to the side, so it comes in a little bit slower, more elegant, I suppose, a bit more random factor going on. Alright, so we'll bring another one in, number 7, and we'll do the same for hood. Now you can use the pick whip, which is this kind of spiral thing here, to link to the transition effect, and it'll be the same. I'll need to switch to the luma matte and luma inverted. You can see he's disappeared, and we'll play through, and straight away now I'm going to need to move that, so I can bring it up there. You can see the ink is coming in up near his head, so we move it around a bit. Can scale it up if we need. And once more for our geisha. This one's going to be a bit faster, I think. So I'll make that start the time I want the geisha to come in, which I think will be around there, like 1.5 or something. So if I select the two of them, control and click on the two, and then hit open square bracket, they both start at that particular point where the playing head is. Cool. I need to change this around a bit. If I hit this little button here, it solos it, so I can only see those layers. So soloed layers, as they're called. This one will be a bit more slow and mysterious. I'm going to slow it down a bit. 2 ways of doing it. One, you can right click up on parent and link, go to columns and stretch, and you can make it shorter or longer if need be. That's the easiest way to do it. The other way is with time remapping, and that is right click, time, enable time remapping, or control alt and T, and you can stretch these keyframes out hitting spacebar. Now After Effects has to sort of render everything on the fly, so I'll stretch this bit out so we can see what's going on. When it's fully rendered, you'll have this green line here, so it exists in the RAM, it doesn't actually exist as a standalone movie, which is why you gotta then spit it out as an MP4 or QuickTime or whatever. Oh, lovely. Oh, nice. Cool. Alright, so let's make this, let's add a bit more to this, alright? So I'm gonna throw in some 3D cameras and things, but first of all, I'm making 3D with this little 3D isometric cube icon. Boom. Okay. And now geisha is track matted to this, so I'm going to parent it, so when I move the geisha layer around, the ink transition layer is going to move as well. All it means is when I move the geisha clip, the ink clip that animates her in follows her around, and it's the same for hood. When I animate hood in, his ink clip will follow him around. Just means it's all neat and tidy. Okay, and now I'm going to need a camera. So I usually use Control Alt and C, or Command Option and C on Mac. That gives me a virtual camera. I tend to stick to either 35 or 50 mil. I don't mess around with these much in terms of changing all the attributes inside here. I just pick a 35 or 50 mil preset and hit OK. We'll hit Control Alt and Shift and Y, or Layer, New, Null Object. You can see all the keyboard shortcuts for those here. Alright. So a null object is just a little square that gets plonked in the middle of the screen. It doesn't render out, but it's really good for controlling other objects or adding expressions, that kind of thing. So I'll make that 3D. Select my camera, and I'll parent my camera to my null object. I'm just going to call null4, instead I'm going to call it cam controls. I'm going to lock my camera. Now the cool thing is I'm now going to be able to grab my null, and I can move that around, and all my other elements are going to move around with me. So these are all right on top of each other. I can have a look at that by going down to active camera. If I go to custom view, and if I hit C on the keyboard, it brings up my camera control tools, which are all here. We've got that one to turn around and orbit around. We've got this one to go up, down, left, right. We've got this one to go backward and forward. Okay. So if I just turn it around, this is my camera here. I'll unlock it. Boom. There's my null. So I want to separate these out. So I'm going to move the geisha layer forward a bit. And you can do this in the normal view if you want. We can cycle through the camera tools by hitting C. You can zoom in or out or track around depending on what you need. I'm going to move the background layer back. With the background layer, I'm going to send back quite a distance, scale that up later. I'm going to move hood and woman with hat just back a little, not too much. Just want to make them look like they're supporting geisha rather than more than anything else. Cool. All right, and to go back to our to leave the custom view, we go back to active camera. Great. So there's a bit of parallax there. We can have a look. If we select all of our layers, we hit P to bring up position. And we can see that geisha has dragged her forward to close to the camera, -325 on Z. And I'm going to send this back like 250. Sometimes it's just easier to keep track with simple numbers, you know. Make that -350. I'm going to bring the camera back out of the way though. I'll hit P on the keyboard to bring up the position parameter. Just bring it back. So there we go. That'll do for now. I'm going to bring woman with hat over a little, maybe a bit more. You can always scale up the background. If you go too far on scaling it up, it will get kind of pixelated and just compressed looking. It also depends on how close to the camera it is as well, so it's quite a distance back at this point, so we should be alright. Okay, so I'm going to move our hood layer over and woman's hat. So we set keyframes for things for oh crap, I deleted all my keyframes by accident there. Easily done. If we select the property, whether it's position, scale, opacity, whatever, and there's keyframes there, and we hit this little stopwatch icon, it gets rid of them. So don't do that. Alright, so I want my my geisha layer to be maybe down a little, and so it zooms, gradually tracks back from the camera as it animates in. Cool. Now this is all, you know, I'll kind of shift and chop all this in due course. With these keyframes selected, I want them to ease in, so usually it's just a case of hitting F9. You can also, with the keyframe selected like this, you right click on it, go to keyframe assistant and easy ease, and that will change the easing of the keyframe, so it gently slows or gently starts the motion rather than harsh linear motion. So let's just play that back, see how it's looking, because it should be looking okay, I think. The timing needs a bit of work, but bring this keyframe up a bit. Okay, so you can finesse this all day long. I'm going to add some text. So hit Control T or Command T on Mac, and I think what was the first thing I had? Mysterious. Oh, look at that, it's the wrong typeface. So I'll change that to, I think, approximate over, something kind of bold, I think it was. I need the anchor point to center up, so there's this tool over here called Pan Behind or Anchor Point tool. Y is the keyboard shortcut, so if we control and double click, we need to change the placement of it. And another one with a bit of text, so call it Geisha. This was Blood Scripter. Bloodseeker demo for all your death metal needs. Just make sure that they're both center aligned. Cool. And drag this over, put it in the center. This will obviously need to come forward. Great. And I need to change the color on that. So I had a few different variations. I think I was taking it from the sort of ivory color lace on her kimono. So I can zoom in by hitting full stop on the keyboard. And we don't always have to change the color to complement what's in the image or the footage, but it's something that I like to do. It just sort of anchors everything together somewhat. Gotta find the correct part. So it's just little subtle tips or hints like that can really take your design to the next level. Now obviously it is starting to blend in, but we'll come to that in a moment, and we'll do the same similar for Mysterious. I'm going to take that little red wrap on her hair, take that as the red. Okay, cool. So keeping it behind her for now. We can scale it up again if we need. 250. And geisha text needs a drop shadow to cut it out. So great plugin that I use a lot is Effects Console by Video Copilot. It's free and it's for loads of keyboard shortcuts basically. So if you have that installed, brilliant. If you don't, go check it out, videocopilot.net. Go looking for the the letter F, letter X console plugin. So control and spacebar, and this is all it does. And I'll type in drop shadow. Now if you don't have this, you can't install it for whatever reason, you just go to effects and presets, type in drop shadow, double click, boom, there you go. That's quite harsh, so I'm going to change the softness quite a lot, but still stands out, you know. You can turn, if we hit this effects button, you can turn the effect on and off. You can see the difference it's making. I'm also going to add a bevel alpha effect. It's going to give a little bit of definition to the edge, you know, because it's kind of painted like, so you can see this kind of just ever so slightly. It's important not to overdo this. It should be subtle. All right, subtle is good. And I'm going to make that sort of 180 degrees opposite the drop shadow. Yeah, minus 45, there we go. I'll copy two of these. I'll put them onto mysterious. Spread out the mysterious one a bit more and send the opacity back a bit, like 20 or something. Just subtle. Again, 33 will do. Right. Okay. So a bit of window dressing to it. So now we're going to animate our text in, and I'm going to use the same method. There's a whole load of other ways to do this. Obviously, you know, you can use the text and effects presets if that's what floats your boat. I'm just going to center these up, 960, cool, for mysterious. And I have a couple of clips here called paintbrush transitions, and all they are is someone's animated some brush strokes in. It's nothing difficult, but it gives quite a cool effect, especially for this kind of thing. So, okay, so bring in this paintbrush transition for my mysterious text. Now, if I scrub through, I can see that it starts at the bottom, works its way up. And just to make it simple on myself, the text is at the top. So I'm going to turn this around. I'll hit R for rotation and change that to 180. So it starts animating in up there. Okay, now change the track matte of my mysterious layer to transition 08. And I got to do the same for our geisha text. So transition 7, drag that to the bottom, geisha, transition 7, and switch that to luma. All right. Now I need the transitions to come in a bit later, the text to come in a bit later. 3 seconds, can always change it. Okay, so I'll bring in our dust, one of our dust layers, drop down the top. It's going to have a black background. So I'm going to hit, usually to get rid of it like that, it's perfect black, you'd hit screen. Okay, but I want these dust particles to be black, and so I'm going to hit invert, or type in invert, bring that over onto my clip. Instead of screen, I'm going to change it to multiply. Okay, so now the dust particles are black. I can add a curves layer, and I can, you know, bump up the contrast a bit on them. I can drag it back a little, you know, depending on how subtle I want it to be. Obviously I can change the transparency as well. Alright, just put that there above the camera, and I'll lock it because, you know, I will accidentally select it. Cool. I want my hood and woman with hat characters to start to change color, so I'm going to hit tritone. The tritone gives like a sepia tint, and I'll apply that to just hood first. So the main things we're looking at are blend with original and high midtones. So blend with original at 100% is normal, and at 0 the effect is fully applied. So I'm going to change this mid-tone brown, the same red as on the braiding on her hair. I can see it's very harsh in terms of tint. So I can change the color that it's applying, or the percentage value actually. I just want it hinting at something, and I'll animate that by clicking on blend with original. If I hit U with the layer selected, it'll give me a look at all the keyframes that I've got. So as this settles into place, I want it to be red by the time it settles into place, so I'll turn this to 100. So the effect is not applied in this case. And then as he moves back, he starts to turn red. And I want this to happen to woman with hat at the same time. So I'll copy the effect, select the tritone effect. Just want that to come in on the woman with hat layer at the same time. Cool. All right. I also want to have a look at the alpha channel. There's a weird sort of selection or fringing artifact on her arm there I want to have a look at. So there's a few different effects I can add. So these all come in very handy with keying and compositing in general. So choker, there's 2 types. So I'm going to actually grab the 2 and apply them one at a time to see how they look. So what this does is it changes the alpha channel, either expands it or shrinks it. So it can be quite harsh and heavy. So I'll try simple choker first. What it's going to do is sort of drag the edge back ever so slightly. So it's 1, and it would need a bit more softness on that. So maybe the 2 will be good. And I'll try refine soft matte, and we'll try refine hard matte. We're not going to need all of them, just a couple of them. You can see that it starts to add a bit more render time. I've got a fast system here, so you sort of have to go easy on, I think, hard matte. Well, it should do. Or we don't need hard matte. Okay, I think that'll be alright. Can always come back to it, how that'll do. Okay, right, so I have another ink transition here called red ink in water. So I'll drop that in on the top. Same deal again. It's got white background on it. So if I hit multiply, it's just quite an interesting look. You know, the colors are really starting to work well together, I think, on this. So I might see how it looks. So playing it back, let's have a look. I think I have to turn back the opacity on the dust, and I'm going to have to rearrange this a bit, but it's starting to look quite interesting. And we can see how our text layers have left the screen quite suddenly. And that's because the transition effects are over. So again, what we'll do there is just Control Shift and T, or Command Alt and T, or Option, whatever it is. Sorry, Command Option T, timer mapping basically. And we'll just extend the edges there. So the text is there. Now our red ink in water needs to be 3D, I think. And I'll send that back. Now this is where we can have a look. Custom view, and put this behind all our people. I can send it to the back. Doesn't need to intersect with anything. I'll scale it up a bit. We can have 2 views as well if needed. So I'm editing this one, but I'm looking at that. It's the same composition. I like to make this smaller to fit everything in. So let's scale up our red ink and water. Mysterious might need to change color, maybe even black. Same as her hair. Does that have to be? Oops. Scale that up a bit, tweak, and we could possibly scale these down a little now if I want to keep them in place with each other. Parent woman with hat and hood to our geisha layer. I'll scale her down back to 100%. That's about it. And push down hood a bit because he's starting to disappear at the edge. And move over one with hat and turn, and we'll get rid of the parenting then, just to make sure that nothing dumb happens. May need to modify the tritone effect because it's starting, our hero lady is starting, woman with hat, starting to get lost a little. One view. Okay. Change the transparency of the dust layer to 60. Okay. And another thing I like to do is put a vignette over the top. I'll actually check the color balance on our lady with hat before she turns red. I wanted it more white, I think. It's kind of the yellowy green. It's a bit of yellow and green, and it's more for personal preference than anything. So, as I said, there was a lot of spill from the green plants. So we can try spill suppression using the advanced spill suppressor. You can see straight away there's a difference. I can solo her, and I can change it from standard to ultra. Turn off my other clips except advanced spill suppressor. I'll just click over her arm, see what happens. No, let's leave it at that. Cool, that's looking better. I'll add some curves to our hood character just to give it a bit more contrast. Doesn't have to be much. Again, this is just done to taste. You know, there's no hard or fast rule in this one. A bit much, I think, on the woman with hat. I can push the highlights a little, and I don't want too high contrast. And apply it again to the geisha and see. Yeah, nice, cool. All right, I'll apply an adjustment layer, which is Control Option Y or Command Option Y if you're on Apple, or you can go to just down the composition, right click, got a new adjustment layer. Control Y is the sorry, Control Shift and Y is this keyboard shortcut. See, new adjustment layer. And these work as adjustment, similar to adjustment layers in Photoshop and Premiere, so I can add an effect to them, and it will affect everything underneath. So what I like is just a basic vignette. There's nothing crazy about this one whatsoever. CC vignette. There we go. Drag it in and boom. Let's have a look at our camera move. All right, so I want this to be a lot smoother. These are sort of standard linear keyframes. So if I open up the graph editor, there's just a straight line. There's not much going on. It can be a bit clunky. So I'm gonna maybe not zoom out as much. So be kind of close, but then it'll drift. And I want this to be kind of smooth when they go into it. So I'll edit the speed graph like that. See, thanks for that. Preview that. So I'm gonna change that. I just want that to be smoother. Looks like there's a dink, which I don't like. I'll just move it around like this, using these handles to get it correct. Lovely. Okay, so let's have a look. Yeah, it's looking good. Mysterious, I don't know. Is the color right? It sort of seems very dark for a moment. Then it's okay after the ink bleed disappears. Oh, it's looking good though. I liked it. I like it. I like it. So if we change the color of the mysterious text, potentially, to match the clothing of the color. Excuse me. So if we match the color of the kimono, see how it looks. Play it back, and that playback is very slow thanks to the screen capture software. So here we go. Yeah, now I can finesse this all day long. Another option would be to have the word mysterious just drop down behind our character a bit toward the end, ever so slightly. That should look pretty good. Okay, so just going to add a little drop shadow to our main people here. So hood, punch that up quite a lot, try 125, just to give that little bit of separation. The background, we'll copy and paste that to woman with hat, make that, dial that back quite a lot because she doesn't need it to the same extent. So change the opacity down to 20 or something. Cool, play that back, let's have a look. Okay, so it's looking pretty decent. Not much more to it really, you know, you can finesse these all day long, but again, it's just about making the little changes here and there. The whole idea is that you're using either the alpha channel or the luminance, the brightness, black and white, from the ink transition layers to animate in your characters and things. Could potentially do without the ink bleeding the background. Does start to merge with woman in hat and hood a bit, but again, that's, yeah, could work on that all day. All right, so that's it for this video. So hopefully you've learned something, and you'll hopefully be able to take these ideas, like it's really nothing too difficult, but you'll be able to take these techniques and processes and apply them to your own work. And yeah, looking forward to see what you can come up with. All right, we'll leave it to it. Nice one. Cheers.